Symposium entitled Uniting Through Cultural Competence, Enrichment Through Cultural Competence. Okay. So to tell you a little bit about our organization, one of our missions is to create a positive environment, to create a positive influence on the Hispanic community for the enrichment of the Texas State community. I can tell you that as an alumni here from the early 1990s, 92, 94. How many people were born in 1994? Got one right here. I can tell you that I walked this campus myself with an Hispanic enrollment less than 1,500. To sit here, to stand here in front of you today, and we can all see that there's down enrollment of over 32% Hispanic enrollment on this campus. And with the demographic shift of the state of Texas, the continuous growth of the Hispanic community will continue. And so 10 to 15 years from now, we could be well over 50% enrollment at this campus. So these type of programs are about enrichment, are about thought, are about empowerment of thought for the good change. Okay. Not to get in front of a great program that we have, I'm going to invite Dr. Nahara, who is actually one of our founding members of the Hispanic Policy Network organization back in 98, 93. Oh, God, sorry. I get those
How many years
ago? So long ago. Don't go there. We're going to say like 72? Dr. Nahara, will you please come and introduce our case?
Before I go on, I want to introduce two personalities here on our audience because they are also responsible for helping us put together the conference from the Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos, Ms. Ofelia Vasquez Filo. She's a founder. The reorganization of Pura Benavides this year. We'll get right on it. It is indeed my pleasure and honor, actually, to introduce our speaker and to welcome him back to Texas State because he was here not too long ago, Dr. Tijerina. And I'm going to read from a bio he gave me here. And it's supposed to be a bio sketch, and it's still long. So you can, I reduced it as much as I could, but you're going to be very impressed. Dr. Tijerina is a professor of history at Austin Community College. He received his BA in Modern Languages from Texas A&M University and an MA in History from Texas Tech University, and his doctorate in U.S. History from the University of Texas. Dr. Tijerina has taught U.S. History at Texas A&M Kingsville, Texas Tech, and the University of Texas at Austin, and San Antonio. Dr. Tijerina, award-winning book, Tejanos and Texas Under the Mexican Flag, won 3 state book prizes, including the Presidio La Bahia Award, the Kate Brooks Bates Award, and the T.R. Fehrenbach Award. In addition, it was selected in 1995 for a national award from the American Association for State and Local History in Saratoga, New York. And it was named by the American Library Association to its choice list of academic books in America for 1996. Another book, Tejanos, or Tejano Empire, Life on the South Texas Ranchos, won the Heritage Book Award. Dr. Tijerina is most widely read work is the publication of his Vietnam War memoirs in the final volume of the Time Life Books series, The Vietnam Experience. His memoirs are included in the volume entitled A War Remembered. His memoir, and as a pilot in the Air Force, Dr. Tijerina flew over 100 combat missions in Vietnam, receiving the Air Medal and the Distinguished Flying Cross. Sir, we commend you for your service. He has co-authored several other books, including a two-volume U.S. history college textbook, Building a Democratic Nation. He regularly writes book reviews for scholarly journals like the Southwestern Historical Quarterly and the American Historical Review. Dr. Tijerina is president of the Texas Institute of Letters, member of the American Historical Association and the Organization of American Historians, and a fellow of the Texas State Historical Association. He is a charter member of the board which erected the Tejano Monument on the Texas Capitol grounds and the founder chairman of the Texas State Hispanic Genealogy Conference. If you haven't seen the Tejano Monument at the state capitol, you need to go see it. Beautiful, great monument, and you should all be proud of that. Dr. Tijerina has been appointed as general editor for the Spencer Book Series for Texas A&M University Press. He was appointed by Governor Rick Perry to the Historical Representation Advisory Committee and has served as history expert witness in several landmark cases for federal courts and the U.S. Supreme Court. And if I don't mention this last accomplishment, or this last bio piece, you probably will never forgive me. He is a native of Ozona, Texas, and a 1963 graduate of San Angelo Central High. He is married to Juanita Garcia of San Diego, Texas, and now lives in Austin. Welcome, Dr. Tijerina.
Yeah, that's right. If you don't mention my wife, it's over. Juanita Garcia of San Diego, Texas, not the other one over in California. The real San Diego. I'm very proud to be here. I'm very proud of you. I just have to tell you, I do visit different universities. I was at a university in San Antonio a couple of weeks ago keynoting a conference that they had. It's a new university, Texas A&M University in San Antonio. That's big money. If you haven't been there, they have 4 buildings, but it's going to be a big university because A&M has got the money and they're pouring it into that little campus. I go to other universities. I work with different groups, but I am so proud because what I see here, your Hispanic network, is a bootstrap network. You pulled yourselves up by your own bootstraps. You have built your own professional faculty network. Even more beautiful than that, the faculty has brought students, Hispanic students, onto this campus in significant numbers. The students represent a viable student body. You're the future of Texas. You're the future of this university. I hope you recognize it. The fact that you are organizing now into student groups, that is a major echelon in your own lifestyle and in your own milestones of your life. What I'd like to talk about is, what's the next step for you? Now that you are in college, now that you are becoming professionals, now that you are learning the power and the necessity to organize. Organize for what? What are the objectives? What are the goals that you have for yourselves? As Americans? As Hispanics? As professionals? What are the goals that you have as individuals, and particularly with this focus, the Hispanic network, for your university? We have to recognize you didn't get here alone. You're standing on the shoulders of Hispanics who paid a tremendous price to get you into colleges. The mere fact that you can pronounce your name, a Hispanic name, the mere fact that you can say something in Spanish, somebody paid a tremendous price for your right to speak Spanish in public. I'd like to talk to you about how it happened that we got to be here for such an austere, such a great group as yours, and be at the Student Center. And that I can be talking to you about your professional career and about the future of Texas. You are the future of Texas. but we have to look at the past and say, how did we get here? I'd like to talk to you about that continuum. The continuum of your grandparents, your parents' generation, getting you to where you now are the young professionals, and then after you, when you become professionals and you begin to come, that continuum is what I'd like to talk to you about. I'd like to talk to you about an awareness of how you got to be here. It's wonderful that you're here. It's wonderful that you have opportunities. But in order to maintain those opportunities, in order to maintain your status, you have to know how you got here. There were forces that brought you here. And there were contending forces that kept trying to keep you from getting here. There were forces that your parents used to get you here, but there were forces that were fighting your parents to keep you from ever graduating from high school. And you must know those forces, because those are human forces. They've always been around, and they'll be here when you, as a professional, are striving for your children and your children's generation. I'm going to read my paper today because I want to expedite it. I want to move through and time myself. I want to be through, I don't know, in 25 minutes, if I can. And if I can, and I lose some of you that have to go to class, I hope at least to get most of it done. Bear with me as I read it. I'm going to try to read it so that I can get everything in. And at the same time, my point to you is where we came from and where you're going. I am very proud of the bio that Israel read. Israel, thank you very much. You wrote it just as my mother would like for you to have read it, sir. But I don't think of myself as the PhD. I don't think of myself as the author. I wake up in the morning. As I'm having my morning juice and going out and listening to the birds and waking up in the morning, I don't know why, but I always go back to the cotton fields. I'm like that little duck, you know, the minute it hatches from the egg, the first thing it says, that's his mother. You see a football, wow, that's my mother. Well, the first thing I saw was a cotton ball. I became aware of who I was. I was in a cotton field. I was born and I grew up in West Texas with a brother and a sister, living with my mother, sometimes with my grandparents or an uncle or an aunt, or sometimes even people who were not our relatives. My father had left us. My mother became ill. And when I was 6 years old, my brother and my sister and I were moved around to whoever would take us. Migrating, moving from one cotton field to another, until I was about 13 in West Texas. People ask, where am I from? Well, I say San Angelo because I finally got out of high school there, but I have lived in every cotton field between San Angelo and Lubbock. Not town, because we were not allowed in town. Once we lived in an old garage where the tractors were parked. We slept between the tractors that the farmer used. Another time we spent the winter in an old railroad boxcar that was up on blocks parked in the middle of a cotton field near Lubbock, Texas. My brother, my sister, and I slept on a pile of straw at the end of the boxcar with about 12 or 15 other people. We used an old tub full of embers at night to keep the boxcar warm. It gets cold in Lubbock in the winter. We had one comforter to keep us warm. No lights, no windows, an old boxcar, one big sliding door that we would slide shut at night. We missed about half the school year in those days. We would pick cotton until about November, December, and then we'd start school in January and go until about May. As migrant Mexican Americans, we were not allowed to go into swimming pools, theaters, barbershops, restaurants. We attended segregated schools when we were able to get to school for 4 or 5 months of the year. We were outcasts whenever we happened to go to an integrated school. We had an accent. I'll never forget one. My teacher kept asking me to say something about the chair, like move the chair or whatever. Because when I was in the 4th grade, I had an accent and I would say share. And she would like to let me say that so the kids would laugh. All the Anglo kids that I was in school with. And I would, I mean, I didn't know. I would say, well, t-shirt, this is my shirt. And all the kids would laugh at me. And it wasn't until I was many years later that I realized that's what they were doing. They didn't think I was smart. They wanted to hear me talk. By the way, the accent that you hear is a coping device that I developed by watching television every afternoon after school. I would watch Edward R. Murrow, and I'll never forget once he said that was modern, industrialized urban America. And I said, man, I'm going to say that tomorrow in school. The first thing somebody says, hey, how you doing? I said, oh, pretty good in modern, urbanized, industrial America. Boy, you speak good English, thank you very much. It's a defensive device. I'm a Mexican inside, and sometimes when I'm riding my bike and I hit a branch or something, and lo mexicanos me sale, I go, ay, 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 ay. Aha, you're a Mexican. And that's what I'm trying to tell you. That's my identity. That's who I am. I graduated from high school, but I had so many teachers trying to discourage us from going to school. In those days, in the 50s, they didn't want us to go to school, and they did their best. And they taught all of our relatives. They would beat us, they would whip us with boards, and they would tease us until finally, or they would just tell us like they did me. I had good grades. My brother, my sister, and I had the highest grades in every school we ever went to. We read more books than all of the kids, and it's because when we got there, I wanted to read books. I read my first grade reader in 2 weeks. The teacher said, why? You're not supposed to finish the thing. You're supposed to use it all semester. And I said, yeah, but I want the next one. So she says, well, here's the second grade reader. I came back a couple of weeks later. I said, T-shirt, give me the next one. We wanted to read. And so that's the way we went through school. The teachers didn't want us to graduate. They kept telling me I should be a plumber. Because they said, be a credit to your race. Be a plumber. You don't need to go to high school. But I graduated, and I felt like, oh man, I'm a big disappointment to my teachers. I graduated. When my brother and I went to Texas A&M University, I went in 1963. He was already there in he was a class of 65, 2 years ahead of me. We thrived at A&M University. It was all Navy. It was all military. We wore uniforms all day long. As Air Force pilots afterwards, he taught me that we should take ownership in our country, especially in our constitutional rights. He taught me that we should make it our life's mission to fight for other Mexican Americans, to fight for our rights here in the United States, just like we were fighting for democracy against communism in Vietnam. We both served in combat. Both of us, you heard I got the Distinguished Flying Cross. Both of us served. He got the air medal. He got the Distinguished Flying Cross. And I never forgot that he's the one who taught me that we were supposed to fight, that we were supposed to take ownership. It wasn't their country. Because that's what I said. Why should we fight for the gringos, man? They hate our guts. He said, no. It's not their country. I was shocked. He said, it's our country. It's our university. It's our country. That's our war. It's our Constitution. He said, there's good people, and they need us. We're going to come back and help the good Americans. And so we did. We agreed on that. He didn't make it. He was killed in combat. But I always remembered that. And when I speak to you because I feel I was commissioned. And yes, I was commissioned an officer in the Air Force. But to me, my real commission was when he gave it to me. He gave me a torch. Carry it. And that's what I'm talking to you about. I'm talking about the torch that we pass from one to the other. It's your torch now. Take it. But take it with a resolve. Be deliberate. Set your goals. Know where you came from and know where you're going. I finished my master's when I got back from Vietnam. I went to Texas Tech University. I was there for 12 months. I finished my master's in 12 months. I wrote my dissertation. And I had a 4.0 at Texas Tech University. I published my dissertation, and I left Lubbock in 12 months. Believe me, 12 months in Lubbock is about all I could take. It's not the people. I loved the university. It was just the weather, and I've been in those cotton fields. I got to get out of here. When I came here and I saw trees and water, I said, this is where I'm staying. The amazing thing, though, was when I got to the University of Texas, they denied my admission. And the graduate advisor said, we're not sure that you can make it, Mr. Killian. Another one was more candid with me. He said, the university is not quite ready for a Mexican PhD. I'm talking 1973. I'm the first Mexican American to graduate from the University of Texas with a PhD in American history. I'm not bragging. I'm telling you the state of Texas never allowed Mexican Americans to get a PhD. You need to wonder why we don't have more Mexican American PhDs today in this university. It's because when I got there, they didn't want me. There were 10 of us who got in finally. 2 of us made it out. The others were literally pushed and threatened and everything else, intimidated until they quit. And I don't blame them. They became wealthy lawyers. They're wealthy lawyers today. They should have been PhDs teaching your classes. I just want you to know what the University of Texas was doing in the 1970s. And I'm not saying that I'm great because I was the first one. I'm saying, can you believe that they never allowed a person with a 4.0 to get in? That's what I want you to know. That is a university that you're in. When you have professors here, minority professors, you need to be proud of them. You need to appreciate what they've gone through, especially when they've got the credentials that your professors do. I'm so proud to work with them. I'm so proud to know Israel and yet, frankly, Lateca and others that you got here. I tried to major in Mexican American studies. They said there's no such thing. And I said, what do you mean? There's no such thing as a Mexican American, is what the graduate professor told me. So I felt like asking, what am I? He said, you're an American. And I felt like saying, well, you should have told the people that didn't let me in school back there calling me a Mexican. You should have told them I was an American. That's why I got my degree in American history. And that's why they mentioned, Israel mentioned that I published my American history university textbook. I'm the first Mexican American to ever write an American history textbook for college as well. Mine is the first one. And I shouldn't be the first one. It should have been 50 years before me. But I had a real rewarding experience at the University of Texas. I got to teach for the Center for Mexican American Studies that we had just recently established. And I'm so proud of that. It allowed us, we called ourselves Chicanos at that time, and I'm so proud to do that. It allowed us to channel our energies and our ideas and our creative research. We were all young doctoral students. We called ourselves the Chicano Graduate Society at the University of Texas. And we worked real hard together to get money for scholarships. I chaired a committee. I was the chairman of the library committee for the Chicano Graduate Student Society. Because whenever I taught my own courses as a teaching assistant at the University of Texas at Austin. A doctoral student teaching assistant. And I taught my own lecture classes of about 250 students the whole time I was there. Maintaining a 4.0. One of the things that I realized is when I assigned books on Mexican American studies to my students, they would come back and then say, the book's not in the library. And I went to the library at the University of Texas had no books on Mexican Americans. So I formed this committee with Emilio Zamora and a couple of others, and we demanded that the library begin to buy Mexican American history books and other books for the University of Texas Library. We finally got $400,000 After many years, about 3 years of fighting, we got the Center for Mexican Studies to fund a library. The University of Texas now has the Mexican American Library and Archives. It's the biggest archives in the nation. But that was Chicano students, graduate students who did that. I'm so proud of it. And by the way, last year I met with the president of the University of Texas, Bill Powers, with a group of people that I was with, and we asked him to finally convert it into a department, a Mexican American department. They announced that this year. It's now the Mexican American department. It's not just a Center for Mexican Studies, and I think that that's the sort of thing that portends well for other universities like yours. It took some threats. We threatened to boycott. We threatened to attack. I told the president, well, if you don't do it, we'll take over your office. And he knew I meant it. Back in the 70s, we could do that kind of stuff. In all fairness, I have to say, though, that I did have, just like what my brother told me, there are good Americans. They're the ones who taught us English. They're the ones who helped us graduate. And I had the good professors at the University of Texas. I had those who, if I walk into class and one of them told me, you're not going to make it in my class, and he was right. I didn't maintain my 4.5. I got a 3.9 something, whatever it is, I don't know, because I had a B. I finally got a B. He told me I was not going to get an A, and I didn't. I got a B in the class. But I had many good professors. Nettie Lee Benson, I owe everything academically to her. This is the biggest library in the world. The biggest Latin American library in the world is named after her at the University of Texas. She was my professor, and I owe her so much. I had good professors. I had good counselors. But in studying history, I learned to analyze. I learned to critically analyze history. I learned that when a book is written about history, I learned to analyze it and to challenge it. And I learned that when somebody talks to me about history, I learned to challenge what they're saying. Not to argue with them, not to dispute, but to ask for evidence. To be critical, not to be cynical, but to be critical. To say, can you tell me your evidence? Can you tell me why you say that? Can you show me the documents? That's what I ask you to do when people talk about history, because history, and I'm a PhD historian, and I'm going to tell you, a lot of it is true. Some of it's true. Some of it's not. Some of it was written. Some of it was never written. We call it history, but it's not history. We're told that it's history, but it's not history. And that's why I tell you, anytime somebody tells you, well, this is what happened with the so-and-so, you need to ask them, really, can I see the documents? That's what I learned when I got my PhD. We have, in Texas, the creation myth. That Texas was born in 1836. At the Battle of Alamo and the Battle of San Jacinto. The creation myth then integrates racist themes. It racializes Texas history. It makes it look as though there were only heathens here before the Anglo-American arrived in 1836, and Stephen F. Austin became the father of Texas. Richard Flores, in his book Remembering the Alamo, states that the popular memory of the Alamo serves only to formalize the segregated, prejudicial, and devalued social relations between Anglos and Mexicans in Texas. The Alamo is used as a club to bludgeon the Mexican American, to segregate, to separate, and to distinguish the Mexican American in history. Thus, it is likely that Mexican Americans can be U.S. citizens. They can be native Texans, but find themselves racially excluded from the gratifying womb of Texas history and Texas memory. In Texas history, the Mexican is demonized. Like General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, and the Mexican American was associated with Santa Anna and the Mexicans who killed Davy Crockett as an outsider, the enemy. This happens even today when a 7th grade Mexican American student attends the required Texas history class in public schools and hears the story, that old narrative of the Alamo and Davy Crockett. They listen as the teacher recites the racially coded public text. And they are categorically distinguished from their Anglo classmates. Richard Flores writes that when he listened to the story of Davy Crockett and the Texans in the Alamo, his best friend nudged his elbow saying, quote, "You killed them, you and the other Mexicans," unquote. Well, that's exactly what I went through. And that's what I'm saying. That's the birth of a Mexican American. Like a sacred rite of passage, the 7th grade Texas history class is the birth of awareness. But the Mexican American students, for them, it represents a separating line in the socialization process. Before that class, they were simply American students looking for their place in society. After they get that lesson, they become Mexicans in Texas, labeled as immigrants, seeking to reconcile their place within the dominant Anglo-American society. If they want a positive identity, they must look outside the Texas history classroom, because even today, our Texas history textbooks still treat the Mexican American as one of the outsiders. It's a public narrative. It's the public discourse. In my study of the Tejano community, I came to believe that it was necessary to bring an awareness of many of the abuses imposed in the last century on Mexican Americans that have been silenced in the public discourse. As so aptly described in the book, Silencing the Past, The Power and the Production of History by Michelle Rolfe Trujillo. The silencing of history and these violent events against Mexican Americans was made painfully real to me when I was asked recently to testify as I was with a history expert witness in a Texas Supreme Court case fought by the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, MALDEF, against the state of Texas for redistricting, congressional redistricting in Texas. And later, I was the expert witness in another landmark case against the state of Texas on the school finance case. I was shocked to learn that the federal judge did not know of the ethnic cleansing of the many vigilante raids against Mexican Americans. In 1859, the mayor, Texas Ranger, John S. Rip Ford, famous Texas Ranger in Texas history, was mayor of Austin and was elected on the campaign that he was going to get rid of all the Mexicans. They had a clean vigilante sweep that drove all the Mexican Americans out of Travis County, Hays, and Comal County, all the way south of the Guadalupe. These were U.S. citizens. These were Mexican Americans who were Texas citizens. These were people with title to their land, all of them driven out of Austin and Travis and other counties in this area. In 1874, the Refugio raid took the largest landowners in Refugio County, all of whom were Mexican Americans, citizens of the United States in 1874, who owned the largest ranches in Refugio County, old Spanish land grants. Hundreds of the largest, wealthiest Mexican American citizens had their throats slit. They were hanged. Their families were driven out of their ranches into Mexico. The very next year, the largest ranches south of Corpus Christi, the Peñascal, the Atravesada, the Paisle, all of the largest ranches in the world were then driven out by Anglo-American raiders in about a 2-week period. Not a single Mexican-American male over age 18 was found after that raid that drove hundreds of the largest, wealthiest Mexican-American families in South Texas into Mexico. They never found the bodies of the men. The women and children fled in wagons to Mexico. They never found the men. They were presumed to have been dumped in the bay. All of those ranches now are the largest ranches in Texas. The King Ranch, ranches in Goliad and Refugio, many of them have no transfer of title. If you say, Mr. King, where does it show how much you paid for this ranch? They can't show you that they paid money, only that they have the ranch now. Those are the vigilante rates, and I was shocked in this court case that the judge did not know about the vigilante rates. The judge didn't know that in the state of Texas, because of racial gerrymandering of the school districts in South Texas and across Texas, that all the Mexican American kids were forced to go to a school they called the Mexican school that was outside of town, a one-room shack. Many of them were not allowed to go to school at all, but when they were, they went to what was called the Mexican school, a segregated one-room shack that had all 12 grades in one room. The judge said, "What do you mean, doctor? Mexican school." He said he was shocked to learn that Texas had Mexican schools. I told him I was shocked to learn that a judge who was making a landmark court decision on Texas school funding didn't know that Mexican American children had not only been segregated, but denied an education until the 1950s. And you're making this decision for the whole state of Texas. You didn't know this. I'm shocked. For this reason, I think it's incumbent upon the new generations of Texas to fill this void, to go back and learn that history that was silenced, to learn about the vigilante raids. We are so worried about ethnic cleansing in Bosnia. What about the ethnic cleansing in Texas that drove out the wealthiest people? We need to go back and see that history to understand. Otherwise, a lot of things don't make sense. It doesn't make sense. For example, in the recent elections, why don't Hispanics vote? Well, it just doesn't make sense. That's because you don't know the history. If you knew the history, you'd say, I wouldn't vote either. We have a history in Texas in which the state government passes laws not to make a better campaign, but to keep people from voting. Texas had the poll tax until the 1950s and 1960s. Texas had the literacy clause. Texas had the grandfather clause. Laws that said you cannot vote in Texas unless your grandfather could vote. Well, if a person's grandfather was a slave, they couldn't vote. But until the 1960s, a Texan had to pay a poll tax to vote. Now, the argument of the legislature was, well, it's only $5, $2.50. Anybody should be willing to pay $2.50 for the privilege of voting. You should be proud to pay the poll tax. It makes sense. It sounds innocuous. It sounds like it doesn't hurt anything. It sounds even beneficial. But the fact of the matter is, it is not only unconstitutional, it was completely unnecessary. It was written specifically to keep poor Texans from voting. One would think that the Texas legislature said, well, let's just go ahead and ask for a fee to pay for all the voting administrative costs. That's not the way it happened. The legislator said, what is the weekly wage of an African American in Texas? What does a Mexican earn in 1903 in Texas? Oh, let's see, they earn about $2.50 a week. Good. That's what the poll tax is going to be. Now let me ask you something. If you had to pay your week's wages and you've got 12 kids to feed, are you going to pay $2.50 to vote? Now to some people it seems like, oh my gosh, $2.50. That's nothing. I'll pay that. But if it was set specifically because that's your weekly wage, they're right. You're not going to vote. That's how they let. And it's not just the poll tax until 1960. There were whole neighborhoods where the Texas Rangers would ride through under their sworn testimony. Until the 1930s and the 1940s, they would ride through little towns like my town, Ozona. And they would say, "Vas a votar?" They'd say, Texas Rangers could see Spanish, because that's who they killed. "Vas a votar? ¿Puedes leer? Are you going to vote?" "Yes, mister." "Can you read?" "No, mister." Well, he knew very well you couldn't read. He's the one that kept you out of school. Can you read?" "No, sir." "If you vote and you can't read, I'm going to put you in prison." That's documented cases in Corpus Christi, in San Diego, Edinburgh, across the state until the 1930s and 1940s. And it wasn't just the intimidation. It was the county judges that wore pistols at the election booth, intimidating and threatening. And it's not even that. Until the 1920s, Texas Rangers systematically assassinated the largest landowners in the valley. Thousands of U.S. citizens were rounded up, handcuffed, and shot in the back of the head if they tried to vote. The Texas Rangers were brought to the state capitol in 1919, interviewed by the legislature. We have over 1,000 pages of their sworn testimony, and that's what they say. "Oh, I just went over to Kingsville, and I just got, I had a list of 10 names. Excuse me, Captain so-and-so, Captain Hansen, where did you get the 10 names?" "Well, the real estate agents and the lawyers gave me the 10 names. So I lined them up, handcuffed them, and I shot them in the back of the head." "With your pistol?" "Yes." "What did you do with them after that?" "We roped them with our ropes and rode them out and dumped them outside, out of town." That happened town after town. In one town, a little place called Porvenir, the Rangers rode up in their horses. This is Texas Rangers, 1919. And asked all the men to come out of their homes. And when all the Mexican-American men in the barrio came out, they mowed them down in a line in front of their families. I ask you, would you vote? Those people who saw that, some of them are still alive. Some of them who saw their grandparents lynched in the 1930s and 1940s are still alive. You want to know who doesn't vote? If you don't know the background, how the state of Texas officially has suppressed voters, it's hard to believe why some people don't vote today. I was brought up, my grandparents told me, "Mijito, do not get close to the Texas Rangers. No se les acerque. Don't get close to them. If they come into the barrio, go and hide. And do not go up there and vote." If I still listened to my grandparents, I would not vote. So understand that voter ID, voting, many other principles that seem to some people so simple, you should be proud to vote. To other people, if you don't know the history, it is a foreboding terror. Now, if you want to hear my full discussion on this, look up the Texas legislative video for January 25, 2011. Just get online, Texas Legislature, Senate video, January 25, 2011, and you'll hear my talk to the U.S. Senate, to the Texas Senate, in which I told the Texas Senate exactly what I'm telling you. I said, there are many people in the state of Texas that do not trust you, that fear you. Not only will they not vote, they don't want to get close to the Texas government. But I was shocked that the Texas senators were using what I was saying as the reason to pass the voter ID law. That's why they were passing the voter ID law, because they know that these people are terrified of them. They're not ashamed of it. They're proud of it. The U.S. government and the U.S. Supreme Court sued the state of Texas. I wrote the official history expert witness report for Attorney General Eric Holder, which he used to defeat the state of Texas in the U.S. Supreme Court. Texas appealed. The U.S. came back and beat Texas, and Texas appealed again. Texas has fought every civil rights act passed by the U.S. government. The Civil Rights Act, Texas fought it and appealed it repeatedly. The Voting Rights Act, Texas fought it and appealed it repeatedly. Now the voter ID, Texas wrote it, they got beat, they appealed it, they got beat, they appealed it, and they're going to keep appealing it. You need to ask yourself, how did my state do that? It's a history that's been silenced. It's a history you have to know in order to understand the Texas that you were born into and the Texas that you're going to live in. I want you to know, to read, to challenge. I want you to forge ahead and make Texas a Texas for all Texans. Make Texas live up to the big claims that our governor claims when he goes up and runs for president about how great Texas is. We need to challenge and say, yes, we have some of the richest people in the country, but we've got the poorest people in the country. We've got the highest wages, but we've got the poorest wages. You need to challenge. I have tried to support writers to fill this void. I do have the series of endowed publishing at Texas A&M University Press. Texas A&M University Press publishes probably more books than any other press on Texas history. And I am the series editor for an endowed series. That means that I get to find people who can write, and I get to publish their book through A&M Press. And it's endowed, it's already paid for. All I have to do is find the good writers, and I try to do that. I found one that I want to share with you. I found a book in the library in Corpus Christi, published in 1922, called El Mesquite, a story in which a mesquite tree is talking about how it was planted in Texas and how under its boughs it saw Spaniards come in and set up ranches and set up corrals, and the vaqueros were so gallant. And the tree describes how Texas became part of the Republic of Texas and part of the United States. The tree narrates the story. I thought that's wonderful. And it's written in such beautifully readable language. Written by a person named O'Shea, but when I looked closely, it said Elena Zamora O'Shea. Elena Zamora married an Irishman named O'Shea. Who was Elena Zamora? Elena Zamora was the daughter of Porfirio Zamora, of a large Spanish land grant that became a ranch in the 1800s in Alice, Texas. In 1862, Porfirio Zamora, the owner of that ranch right outside of Alice, Texas, heard that the French were going to take over Mexico. He rounded up his vaqueros, hundreds of vaqueros, over 200 of them, and he took them down. They were the best riders in the world. The best rider in the world is the Mexican-American vaquero. That's the father of the North American ranching industry in the United States. This man took hundreds of vaqueros from his ranch and other ranches. In 1862, went down just as the French were invading Mexico, and on the 5th of May, 1862, when the French invaded, under the command of General Ignacio Zaragoza and General Porfirio Diaz, Porfirio Zamora took the Tejano cavalry and hit a flanking movement on the French. The Mexican general said, we would not have won that battle if it had not been for the cavalry. The cavalry was a bunch of Tejanos. You want to know why we celebrate the Cinco de Mayo more in Texas than they do in Mexico? Part of it is because we drink more Lone Star beer. But part of it is because we won that battle. It was our voice. That man got the Medal of Honor from President Benito Juarez of Mexico. General Porfirio Diaz came to Corpus Christi and presented the Medal of Honor to Porfirio Zamora, whose daughter he sent to this university in 1905. Elena Zamora O'Shea came here as one of the first, probably the first Mexican-American graduate of this university when it's a small college. She's the first Mexican-American to publish a book in Texas. And that's her story. She was so sharp. I asked the old vaqueros that knew her, and they said, le decían la bala. Yeah, they called her the bullet. Yeah, ¿por qué? I said, yeah, because she could ride a horse better than any man. You want a hero? You want the truth? The truth is that we've got the people who can write, and we've had them all along, who can tell you both sides of Texas history. Look for this history. It's your history. It's your history not only as a university, not only as a woman, but as a Texan, and certainly as a Hispanic. I have worked real hard in groups with organizations. As Israel said, I worked real hard to raise the Tejano Monument. I'm working right now, I just signed a contract yesterday with the City Council of San Antonio. San Antonio is going to clean the entire Alamo Plaza. Everything from the front wall of the Alamo, all the way up across the street to all the stores, Ripley, believe it or not, I don't know, bulldoze. They're going to rebuild that. And they're going to make it a park, a plaza that reflects what really happened at the Alamo. I signed on as their consultant, and I will be their consultant for the next couple of years as they build it. And what they're going to do is they're going to turn the Alamo into the real story of what really happened. Long before 1836. The Alamo is a beautiful story, and most of it happened long before Davy ever got there. Nothing wrong with Davy. Those people were heroes, including the Mexicanos who were inside the Alamo with Davy Crockett and William Barrett Travis. They were heroes. There's no question about that. But the Native Americans who lived there for 100 years before that were heroes also, because without them it wouldn't be the Alamo. So I commend the city of San Antonio, and I want you to know that. I'm working with people like that, because what I'm trying to do is I want Texas to reflect all of us. Texas historians have developed an exclusive history, one that tended to silence the Mexican American throughout history. It denied not only our history, but our identity. And in writing our own history, we Tejano historians, of whom there are many now, there are many. When I got to the University of Texas in 1973, I was told there's no such thing as Tejano history. Today, we had a conference in June. We had 46 Mexican-American PhD historians at that conference. There are many of us now. We are forging our own identity, even as we take increased ownership in America and in Texas. And the Hispanic leaders of tomorrow, you, must not only seek out their true identity, their true history, but you must unite in your own organizational strength, even now as students and faculty, to shape your own identity, to forge your own role in Texas and in the America of tomorrow. Thank you.
We're going to take a short break, maybe go to the restroom or maybe get some additional snacks. We're going to come back in about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're going to start our panel discussion. So 10 or 15 minutes, thank you very much.